And Gina's up there, and we got the warning, don't say anything, going, holy mackerel, who's on Biden's cabinet? I'm going, my God. But anyway, let's get back to, first of all, the PBGC, Pension Benefit Guarantee Corporation, is bankrupt, okay? And that's why I was saying in 1969 and 70, 71, when I was going through pilot training in Pensacola, all my friends couldn't wait to fly the C-130. And the C-130 is a 4-engine transport, which was a guarantee to go into the airlines. And me, like an idiot, I chose a helicopter gunship, and no airline wanted me. So it was kind of a blessing in disguise. And the thing, I'm being 75 right now. Kim and I own one of the biggest assisted living homes right on Camelback Avenue in Phoenix. And it's for high-end baby boomers. And I think it's like $15,000, $20,000 a month. That's a lot of money, to change your diapers. So if you're a millennial or younger right now, if you want to be changing diapers, pay attention to this Who Stole My Pension podcast with Rich Dad and Ted Siedle. So any suggestions I think it's too late for the boomers, personally, because when they can't afford their house, because the value of the house is going to come down also, and they can't sell it because the market's so soft, because there's a big sinkhole. Real estate's a big, big sinkhole. Any recommendations for the younger generation if you have parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents who are heading for the old retirement home? Yeah, but let's talk to the younger generation with parents, grandparents, great-grandparents headed for the big retirement home before the last retirement home in the sky. I mean, that's exactly my thing, because you're talking about the resume. I remember my friend was a pilot for Aloha Airlines. And he says, why don't you come down and apply? And I was still in the Marine Corps. And when I went down there, they said, gunship pilot, bye. It was the best thing ever happened to me. They didn't want me because of the way I flew. But anyway, so the good news is I went into real estate. I took real estate investment courses. Today I own a ton of gold. We took a gold company public on July 8th, 2022. We have silver. We had Jim Rickards on, who was giving ideas for, and we check out Jim Rickards' show with Rich Dad, because we have ideas, especially for you younger people. Face it, man, your father, grandfather, great-grandfather are out of time, but you still have time, and that's why I speak to the younger generation. And when I hear people saying, well, I've got a 401k or a pension, I said, then you're being set up. That's my opinion. Now, it might work, but I think what happens if the same thing happens to my generation, it happens to you, when you're 65 and you find out there's nothing in your 401k or your pension or whatever it is, it's too late, because the greatest asset you have is your time. I mean, that's what I would say to younger people right now. I wouldn't, we have the cash flow game, we have clubs all over the world, but you better start training your brain, because, financial education is a great protection from financial slavery. So I remember in 74, I was still in the Marine Corps, still flying out of Hawaii, and took my first real estate course, and that's when I knew. I was just following my rich dad's footsteps. And my poor dad kept saying, go back to school, fly for United, get your PhD, and have a pension. And that was my father's advice, and didn't work for him, but he was still telling me to do it. Jim Rickards was just on our program just before you, and he says the problem with the last depression, it lasted longer than the depression. This, he said, the crash of 1930, let's say, lasted into the 60s, because the memory of how severe it was, the depression. And I think the most important thing a young person needs to take care of today is their attitude, their mind, and their education. Because this boom, I want to prove, I don't like to tout my own stuff, but this here proves I was speaking back then what's happening today. The biggest stock market crash in history is still coming. I need to change that, is now here. And if your house is your biggest asset and your 401k is going to keep you alive, and your savings, how can you save money when they're printing tons of it, trillions? And every stimulus is a theft of your wealth. If you think about that, when they print money to give to people who don't work, they're stealing your money, your wealth. And if your father is still trying to get a job with a pension or a 401k, I look for other advice right now, because if you're young, your greatest asset is time. And don't wait to be an old guy like our fathers or our generation, Ted's and my generation. We're out of time, and time is your greatest asset. Don't listen to your parents. If they told you get a job and get a 401k and count on the government taking care of you and like the PBGC, Pension Guarantee Credit Corporation, and then Biden's team up there in the White House protecting I don't know who, I mean, you're in serious trouble. So I would just back it up again is rather than listen to your mommy and daddy. The reason I brought up the stock market, I mean, the last depression, it lasted years beyond the depression because people remembered how bad it was. So Ted and I were fortunate. We both had dads who lost their pensions, but that woke us up. And the greatest asset, if let's say you're under 50, is your greatest asset today is time. So we at the Rich Dad Company, we don't, if you want to invest in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, and all that stuff, knock yourself out, But I'd rather be an entrepreneur. I'd rather be an insider investor. I want to control my own deals. So I just took a gold company public on July 8th, 2022. You can check it out. Richest gold mine in the world, 140 years old. But that's what I do. I don't hope that somebody's going to manage my money for me, because that's what losers do. And so it's not the Rich Dad Show. So who stole my pension with Ted Siedle? Again, he's a former attorney with the United States Securities and Exchange Commission. Like I say, never finished high school, but he just kept going on. The guy's a genius. And he's an amazing man. It's a fantastic book. And again, if you don't want your great-grandparent, your grandfather, your mother and father becoming your roommate, and you have to change their diapers because they can't afford a retirement home, which I do own. Anyway, it's a very expensive retirement home. But your greatest expense is at the end of your life. And if you lose your pension, like at age 50 or 60, you're toast. So please listen, you young people out there, greatest asset you have is your time and your mind, and be careful who you take financial advice from. And to prove I know what I'm talking about is I wrote this book here, Rich Dad's Prophecy. This came up once I saw the 2008 crash. I knew at that moment they hadn't fixed the problem. They made the problem worse. They were floating things called derivatives, MBSs, mortgage-backed securities, CDOs, collateralized debt obligations. The market crashed. I made a fortune because all the real estate prices crashed. So we went back in and we bought all this cheap real estate. So crashes are really, really good. But I think this crash, it says here, the biggest stock market crash in history is still coming. It's here. This is 2022. It's here. Pensions are crashing. Real estate's going to crash. Gold's going to go down. Silver's going to go down. Bitcoin's going to go down. But it could be the best opportunity of your lifetime if you take responsibility for what's inside your head and who puts it there. It's your brain. Like in 1974, when my dad was unemployed, I'm coming back from Vietnam and getting spit on by all these hippies and all that stuff, the love children. Oh my God. But anyway, I'm sitting there and my poor dad says, get your PhD and fly for the airlines. I go, you gotta be nuts. And then my rich dad says, you want to be rich, you got to start your own education. So I took a real estate course in 1974, it cost me $385. I learned how to buy real estate for nothing down by a real instructor. See, the problem with academics is most instructors are smart people, but they don't do what they preach. So the most important thing you can do as a young person is look for a teacher who actually does what they do. And every time you bring up school, I was following my poor dad's advice. So I'm flying for the Marine Corps, still in Hawaii, and I was stationed in Hawaii, and I went to take an MBA program. And I got kicked out of that program also. Well, number one, I walked into the class with a Marine uniform on in 1974. No, 73. You don't do that. I got spit on, harassed by all these hippies who became school teachers and attorneys and all that stuff. But then the accounting teacher, he was teaching me accounting. And I'm not an accountant, but he didn't know what he was talking about. So if you look at the cash flow board game, that's real accounting. That's called entrepreneur's accounting. Income statement, balance sheet, statement of cash flow with the auditor on it. That's real accounting. And so I'm sitting there getting spit on by all these hippies. They're now baby boomers, and they're probably out of a pension. But anyway, and I questioned my accounting teacher. And my accounting teacher said, he says, what qualifies you to teach me accounting? He says, I'm an accounting teacher. I said, well, do you run a business? He goes, no. I said, well, how can you teach?
Small ebook, big impact, the wealth tree. The only 4 ways that will make you financially free forever. Download it here for free.